Good afternoon. Good evening, HubSpot Nation, LinkedIn friends. Welcome to another episode of Let's Build Communication with Clemen. How you doing, man?
Doing good, doing really good. Excited for that topic. As I just message you when you proposed that topic. I guess you were kind of listening to my discussion with my co-founders today during lunch because we talked exactly around that. So how and when to use AI for communication. Um, really also curious to hear your take on that as an English native speaker because I feel there is a different position around that, and I can happy to go in the detail of what triggered the discussion, but yeah, super excited for it.
Yeah. Well, it came to pass. Uh, came to pass. I went over to Claude and put in last week's transcript. First of all, to see if we had promised talking about anything specific last week for this week. He said no, which is kind of disappointing. Uh, um, but one of the options, because he always gives options, was AI and communication, which I kind of looked past. But then, for some reason, with agents popping up all over the place, I think at the title like agents everywhere came to mind. Um, but then, like I remember this morning we talked about an update with Customer Agent in HubSpot about how you can add it to chat flows now, which literally means we can create situations where you got to qualify to go talk to the agent, right?
Yeah,
Which makes sense from an experience standpoint, because if it is an easy answer, if it is I want to talk to the specific person, if there's a knowledge base answer, uh, there's lots of opportunity to take what we were doing in chat flows and combine it, right? Which at the end of the day, I think that's the challenge for everybody is how do we treat AI and humans, but also I guess, unintelligent automation. Is that what that is? Where we build it and it's just like trigger based um, but as we were sharing it, it makes sense from an experience management standpoint, but also from a cost standpoint, right? Because as customer agent, next week, I think transitions to token based or to credit based, right? You might not want people just jumping on the website having long
yeah,
conversations with your agent, right?
yeah,
Because there's going to be a cost related to that. So that added a new element for me, like to think about and to help others think about, where we're already at the point where it's like this thing is now so valuable, not in that it replaces the humans, but that in that it solves a problem human um, without human touch, right? Like that part, that problem and solution without the human having to be involved is more valuable and like across the journey than just wondering, oh, can this do what Clement was doing, right? So that
yeah.
was interesting to think about, and that's where the topic came from. And again, we're back to this place where I don't know how you do that without mapping out the entire journey and understanding all of, my favorite marketing definition is marketing is any two-way communication between you and the customer. You need to know as a business every single touch point, right? And if you don't, I don't know how you even start this process without doing that first. But I'm curious, as you guys have seen, and maybe that's what you were talking about today, like you've been very focused on sales emails. But as it spreads, like, and we know the whole team has a responsibility to the relationships being developed. It's got to be a team effort to decide like when and where and how to use AI throughout the journey. to communicate?
Yeah. I think it's a topic that will need to be discussed within every team from one perspective, from the cost perspective. As you said, there are costs involved, and at some point you might just say, okay, for that part of people, I'm willing to invest more to have maybe better agent available, or to have a more thorough research done before you even reach out to them, because I believe they're more valuable and we can solve pains for them immediately. Or for some part, okay, they're too early in the journey, that I just want to keep them somehow engaged with templated messages, for example, and it's fine when I get the signals, and when I see they're engaged or they're actively searching through my website. Of course, I will invest more resources, AI or human resources, into the communication. And on the other part, which relates to discussion we had today during lunch, is for me as a non-native English speaker, 5 words can mean the same because it translates to the same word in Slovene. But for someone in native speaker, 1 can mean completely different tone, connotation, taste, where I just want to say something. And in that for example, concrete word, we were kind of having an in a way argument about this leverage. So I was writing an email along with a proposal that I was about to send yesterday in the morning, and at the beginning I was just kind of making a joke. Hey, it's one of those rare days when Europe is working and US is not, because you have holidays. And I put no. So I wanted to leverage that situation to prepare the proposal. I'll send it to you as soon as possible. So when you start your day on Tuesday, you have it already there, so that that we don't prolong and so forth. Or for me, it was just okay. I wanted to just make a personal connection. Where for someone natively speaking, the word leverage can mean, okay, you are kind of trying to trick me or something. I mean, it can have a bad taste for someone.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just a nice word that I'm used to maybe use.
Right.
So at that point, is it better or worse to have AI check, if nothing else? Is that fine, or that sounds rude or impolite or too aggressive or passive aggressive, or is it not friendly enough? Is there a potential aftertaste for someone who is not native speaker? AI can can make a day in that case, even though the output of that AI polished email was more way less personal, but it was more safe in a way.
Right.
So I think a different situation for a non-native speaker and a native speaker is around how and how often or how religiously you always go to AI and ask for help to write something. So I'm giving back the question maybe to you before we go in further in that topic. How and when AI, how to use AI in communication. How do you see that?
What was going through my mind was that I think in a lot of ways, like there's like a consolidation of, say, leverage that needs to happen first. And then it's just going to be global and international. Like, because I started thinking about, because at the heart of what you're talking about is localization, right? And that's always been a challenge for any corporate team, especially once they started getting a taste of things like Google Translate and things that can translate but not localize. Like to think that you can translate, especially when it comes to technical, documentation or trying to drive emotion. Um, One of my first experiences with that was the word rugged in English, right? Was for an industrial piece of equipment. It means it'll hold up, it'll withstand, drops and falls and being run over, things like that. But when you translate it into Spanish, it means like strong dude, like man, like manly man kind of thing, right? And that it was my first experience with like how it's much more nuanced,
Yeah.
than we want it to be. And that's the level of nuance that is near impossible to count on AI for right now. But for any business, like if you don't have a person available in each country that knows all the culture, like that's the only way you can solve for it as a business. And that's where AI will be able to solve for it without you having to do that. It's just going to take a minute for the context to show up. So what I mean by like consolidation is like, I'm curious for your thoughts on like the languages that we see first, like English, Spanish, Mandarin. Like how far do we go in expecting, AI's ability to successfully translate and localize every single language, right? And does it become like a bespoke nice to have? Because in order to use AI early on, you will inevitably get exposed to these top 5 languages. And is it just easier to speak through that instead of trying to go the other way? That's where like at some point it's just so easy to personalize. People will be creating their own languages. Like you start Star Trek and like you start throwing
Yeah.
everything in there. That's the fun part, right? But it's a key point when we're trying to drive like emotion and trust. Safety is often like a direction, especially at corporate level, that they want you to take to reduce risk. But it's usually also a way to reduce authenticity
Yeah.
and like who you are, right? And that's where I think the asynchronous, what we get to is there's less asynchronous, and almost all asynchronous activity is where everybody expects it to be AI. And it's like we don't need it to be like Clemen because it's, even if it's the AI version of Clemen, we know it's the AI version of Clemen. And it might remind us of Clemen, but it won't have the same impact, like if that makes sense. And it'll
Mhm.
be like a means to an end, like it's the transactional part of the relationship, right? Meanwhile, because if that were to happen on a live conversation, like you can immediately cover your tracks and say, oh, this is why I use that word,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's
And
this,
not
and that's
only
what
you.
salespeople like. Sorry, like salespeople specifically, they will. This is how they've built trust. This is how they've done it for years. And it's the moment that the marketer comes in and says, "No, why can't we just say that on the website?" And it's because the salesperson has to be, not has to. They like being in control of the response,
Yeah.
right? Like so, it can be an ambiguous word, but if we're there to explain it away, it's another way of creating value. It's another way of mitigating risk. Where if you're just consuming it out here without us there, without the expert there, a lot of people see that as risky. So you see everybody saying game changing and all these words that it's like, everybody starts using the same words because we don't take risks,
Yeah.
unless we're like in the conversation with the person.
Yeah. And when you're in a conversation, not only that you can explain further, but you immediately see someone's reaction on their face, on non-verbal communication. If I would say to someone, when we are talking and I see your face on a screen and I say, leverage, and you don't feel comfortable with that word, I can, talk through you. I can explain what I meant by or I can start smiling, and you will understand that it's a joke.
Right.
Where if I just write it to you and you will read that word, after 5 hours, I have no control of how you feel about it. And you might not respond to my email because I used the wrong word. Because I know I was not just thinking about it in that way as you might perceive it. So in a way, yeah, the written communication might be better to be on a safe side, because you don't have a control of how someone reads that and in how they feel about it, those words. Where in a live conversation you have full control of how the flow goes after every word, basically. Where with written communication, it's different.
Yeah. And all these things go against email, in my opinion. Like, as we move into this very conversational, very dynamic, more personalization than ever before is expected, right? You just can't achieve some of these things via email. And it's because we can't control who's on the other side reading it and the mood that they're in, and especially English, which, one of the reasons it's been challenging for me to learn other languages is because I like to play with the English language so much, right? And I try to take that mindset into the other, and it doesn't work, right? There are rules. There are rules to follow and learn first before you can start playing with it, right? And that's what I mean. We've all been there before, probably, where it's like sarcasm doesn't read well via email, like tone, like all this stuff. And there's like major problems start up because of the wrong word used in an email. Right. So I think
not only wrong word, we all communicate differently in written format. One might be just verbose and they write a long paragraph, when someone could just say, yeah, that's fine. And they would be, they would have the same strong opinion about the same topic, where one explains and one just confirms that or disagree with that. You as a receiver of that message, you can feel completely different from a long paragraph, or yes, it's fine, where the messenger meant exactly the same. Again, if you would see that person saying, yes, awesome, that's fine, and smiling and looking at you and confirming that with non-verbal communication, you would understand that, yes, it's fine. Where if I just see the the written, yes, it's fine, I can make 100 different stories what you meant by that you're just angry and you don't want to argue with me, or that it's fine, or something else.
Yeah. Do you ever watch Amazing Race? You ever seen that show?
No.
Like, rule number 1 is to read the clue. Like, and in the last season I was watching, like, you get disqualified because you didn't read one word. Like, you left one word out as you read it. And that's the part that's like, I can understand why people want to be like, especially when you can help the person, and you know that you can solve their problem, you can answer their question. Like, it's you, and that communication is hard and all these things could go wrong. That's why we all want to get on the call, right? And yeah, that first part of, like, what's completely out of our control is how it gets read, right? Which ends up being, why we move to these safe words. When in reality, See, but even there, that's tough. Like, I could think of a number of reasons why somebody might not appreciate using the word leverage, especially if you're relating it to the Memorial Day holiday specifically, right? And that's where, like, okay, there's another layer of nuance,
Yeah.
right? And that's where it's been interesting on LinkedIn as we do content. Like, I kind of cherry pick how I'm feeling, but like, if I still want to go live and it's a holiday in the US, I'll be like, oh, I'm just making content for my Europe friends like today. Like, they're not off.
Yeah.
So all these different layers to think about. At the end of the day, like, we're gonna let AI. So maybe that's a good first step. Like, find all the nuances, like in all your communication. And where is it, the riskiest and the most easy to misunderstand, the situation of the exchange. We should, want humans there. But I think what's more important is that we set expectations, like with the people that we're communicating with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially as people get accustomed to AI, right? As long as you tell them what happens next and they can get value out of that, that's where, like, back to the chat flow situation. Like, as long as you're open and clear about when the handoff happens and why it's happening and why you can't just talk to a person, right? I think that's most important out of this. And that's probably going to be the hardest part for most organizations. Like, but again, it's another spot where AI can help you, set those expectations in a number of ways, whether it be writing copy for the non-AI elements, or managing feedback, after it comes in.
Yeah. I was involved in a communication on LinkedIn on a post, I think last week, around HubSpot, chat agent on the website, where one of the solution partners was kind of complaining, hey, it's getting kind of annoying for me as someone who already went through the knowledge base. I have, a deep understanding, and I really just need to ask someone. That now I need, kind of 20 minutes to go through the AI agent in the chat to get to that person that I just need to ask something, because I did everything what the chatbot will do, and only then I can get to the question, where I kind of put out the idea of, especially in HubSpot case, they have the information who you are. AI can help, I think, here understand who is talking to that agent, chat agent. And if you know that person is a customer of HubSpot on the enterprise plan, or if you know this is a solution partner who's been in a community for 10 years now, the chat bot, I guess, should act differently and be more willing to let you through the human, because the experience level of that person is completely different than to someone who just wants to understand the comparison of HubSpot Sales Hub and Marketing Hub, for example.
Yeah.
And then the experience for the user will be way better at all different levels, in a way of a customer journey, so that the chat would adapt to where I am in my customer journey. If I'm a HubSpot user for 10 years, of course my question will be completely different, at a completely different level than if I'm just thinking about HubSpot, where right now we have the same experience with the chat.
Yeah. So it sounds like question number one, as you open up the chat, is, do you want to talk to a human or AI? Because I think that's where most people still think they can control, what they can qualify or guide. But it's a situation. Like, if I'm smashing zero, like, right away, just give me to the representative. Like, don't make me do it. But that's where, as a business, you develop you learn from that. And this is where it's not just like one web page and one chat, and that's everybody comes in. Like you design these experiences so that when you know that they're hitting it on this page, like you can start to whittle down the types of things they're going to be asking chat in that moment. And that iterative management of this is what I think a lot of people are sleeping on in terms of AI's capabilities to iterate across situations, very quickly, which is why, and if you train your agents to do this, like which page are you on? All right. And even if it's like this page, like two different product pages, right? We can build that in to say everything else is equal except for this situation. Please make sure if they're on this page and they're asking about pricing, like this is the answer. Or it's like, go to human, right? So even if they pick AI out of the gate, there can be trigger words and trigger statements to say, yep, you got to go to a human, right? And I lost my train of thought here. What else was this what else were you talking about with the team? Like, is this the gist of the conversation, or did you guys?
That was that was part of it. The other part, what we're also kind of experiencing with users now when we're onboarding them, when we are leveraging AI to do contact and company research, go through previous communication in HubSpot, and then bringing external and internal data considering the HubSpot as a CRM, is especially now with new people coming to your CRM, the inbound leads, they're different levels of how much they're willing to show up who they are. When someone is just signing up for a trial with a fake email, I mean, you probably don't want to spend AI credits to personalize something if someone is not willing to say, hey, are you John or Patrick? Where someone, if a CFO from a corporate signs up, of course you want to really well communicate with that person. So it's kind of a filtering of a sort to kind of okay, if someone is showing high intent and providing me real data that I can use and better communicate with you, of course I will do a thorough research of your company, understand what your mission is, what your position is. If the considering LinkedIn, if you can find a person on LinkedIn, even if they sign up with a personal email, of course there's so much more because I can immediately know what their position is, their seniority, where they work, at what company, what industry. I can communicate much better compared to someone who just went to one of those disposable email domains and created an inbox and then signed up for a free trial. But kind of a filtering for the quality of leads coming to your CRM might be something that for now, when you were just sending a templated message, it was fine regardless of who is who and who is willing to show up as a human being or someone who is hiding to just try out your tool. Where now when similar to the customer agent, where the costs are involved, you might do the initial filtering before you invest resources into something where it's a dead end. If the AI flywheel, whatever you call it, the system that will do a really good personalization for someone throughout the trial period, for example, is triggered immediately after someone signs up, before you even send the first email. As soon as you send the first email, it will bounce if it's fake email. But you can you can check for that before you spend all the resources of AI to do a research on that account. So I see that kind of popping up more and more in the communication.
Yeah.
And this is a challenge that is now present, and it was not before, where everyone was getting the same message.
Right. Yeah. No, it introduces another level of risk, probably, which is often the case. when you open yourself up to accessibility and, releasing control of the journey. But when I think about like lead magnets, for example, especially when you pay like for content syndication, and then you go see the list and it's like half of it's competitors downloading your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Are we gonna see like agent like battles? It's like, and I'm only highlighting this because people need to be aware. And I'm sure I wouldn't put it past somebody to try. Sorry if I'm giving them the idea right now. But like building agents, like to drain, you know, other agents or to keep like systems occupied, right? Like it's an even if it's AI handling stuff, it's still a window into your system that if you don't build the AI out properly, right? This is where I think like at some point in the process of delivering customer agent, you got the ability to say this stuff is private, this stuff is not, right?
Mhm.
And starting to manage that. And I wonder if that came from like, the agent maybe saying something you didn't want it to say.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, definitely something to be wary about. I remember what I was thinking as you were talking about the HubSpot, like knowledge, like differences. And I do think with HubSpot and AI, it's in a unique spot right now in terms of, and I was talking to Nico about this because he's trying his best to make sure everybody has a great experience with Hub Helper Harry, right? And he suggested, and because where AI isn't yet, and this is where it's still SaaS, like at the moment in terms of usage and users, like brings the money, right? And people don't like hearing, um, I don't know, right? And they don't like being challenged a lot of the time. And we
Yeah.
need AI to be able to do that. But we are nowhere close it saying, I don't know, at least. It challenges us all the time. But being able to say, I don't know in a trusted way, like,
Yeah.
does it really not know? Or is it just not seeing that part of the training data? And that's where with HubSpot specifically, the same challenges we have in the ecosystem where HubSpot is just moving so fast, faster than there's documentation for the product itself. We can't possibly expect AI to be better than that. Like if the
Yeah.
information doesn't exist, right, it can either start making up answers or be good enough to say, I don't know, and here's why, because HubSpot did this and this and this, and now I know they've advanced this. And this is literally like you have to get to the point where it can see like one or two LinkedIn posts or random problem posts where current state is different now than it was 2 months ago, and it's
Mhm.
causing problems, and it can see like nobody's answering the questions, right? But until then, because one of his suggestions was to like go scrape the community for solutions, for accepted solutions, and I said, please don't do that. There's lots of outdated accepted
Yeah.
solutions posts, and this is a part of the problem HubSpot has had since 2020, right? Like they got so good at owning SEO where almost any marketing related term, especially related to marketing automation, you would get a knowledge base article or a blog article or community or academy, right? And as soon as they started expanding outside of marketing automation into a full platform, those answers, were often not good enough and worse off for us and now worse off for AI as well. There's misinformation in a lot of places. So it's not that magical yet
Yeah.
to where it can understand the difference between old and new HubSpot. But what I said, which I don't know if he's done it yet, we have things like MCP where I was like, maybe you could just plug it in like to HubSpot and it can just see like if it's available. And that's where, again, we
Yeah.
don't have access to all the APIs. So we come back, full circle to where it comes back to the context of these systems, right? And that's maybe another good point. Like, are you in a place to give AI in that moment of the journey the context it needs to be able to effectively communicate?
Yeah.
I love this organic framework that we're building right now.
Yeah.
But there's so much nuance. It's a deep conversation for sure.
Yeah. Providing the context is where it gets tricky. Even if you want to to bring all the MCP and stuff and all the agents to a useful level, all the context is a tricky part. And another way to exactly that similar discussion we had today was, you can do a lot of deep research now with all the AI, and you can generate a lot of context and words around something, and you see a lot of posts on LinkedIn, and you see stuff on YouTube and everywhere. So you get a lot of information, but that gets in a way outdated. And if you're building your own context, however, you will keep adding more and more, but will you cleaning up so that you are only having the relevant and the right context and not something that is outdated? Is the outdated based on date or based on the context? And if it's not based on date, how then you evaluate what is from where you, let's say you have a Google Drive folder, you're just throwing stuff in, resources. At some point, half of it will be useless or misleading or driving you in the wrong direction. Or you changed how you want to communicate. So are you going back and cleaning that up? I would bet not, which means then what is the system that you keep it up and clean? Similar to what you said around all the knowledge base and community posts and everything on HubSpot. Yes, something that was not possible, and then people were hypothesizing how to do that 4 years ago. If there's still part of the knowledge and context provided to the agent might be lost, because there might be just a feature released 5 months ago that just solved it.
Yep.
And then the experience for me as someone who would like to use that agent will be, okay, gosh, it doesn't work, so I lose kind of that trust, and then convincing myself to go again to that agent in a month will be a much harder thought process than it was initially, when I said, okay, of course it knows, but then I get something back and it doesn't work, or it's wrong, or it's outdated. And then we kind of get back to that experience with AI provided answers and communication. I would say I don't think it's a solved problem. I mean, it's far from a solved problem. Right. And I'm sure there will be different approaches to kind of keeping the context provided to AI in the best shape possible.
Yeah. But you mentioned trust there. Like maybe there's like a trust impact score that can be applied to like each touch point. Like imagine that.
Yeah.
And like the higher it gets, like the less. I mean, honestly, this is where it's like when context is clear, the easier it is to screw it up. From a human perspective, you might want AI like doing that part, especially when it's math or like ones and zeros. So it's not as clean cut, I'm sure, as most people want it, but maybe that's number 3. So we've got, how much nuance is involved in the communication at that touch point. then how easy, number two, how easy is it for you to give AI the context it needs to be successful at that touch point? And then number three, some kind of trust, like measurement of how important is this touch point into building trust. Because it's not, and this is where it's a different way to look at it in terms of not are we going to convert right here? And that's where you start to think about, like, is the first impression like the best place to have AI, represent your business, right?
Yeah.
Or is it where it's just a heavily administrative quoting process and it can help do that and deliver a quote after you review it, right? Now your sales team is freed up to do that first impression, right? So this might have been the most productive Let's Build I've ever had. Like, we just built a framework, I think.
Yeah, just
Finally
for the
deliver
next
on the
week.
promise that Claude made in the description of his episode. Did I delete it? I might have deleted it. It likes to promise like frameworks and stuff. Yeah, I deleted it. And actually gave it was like, join us live today to get the framework on how to figure out where AI is going to be in the journey. And the one time I deliver on the framework, I deleted that part. So
well,
lesson learned.
lesson learned, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Like Claude knew what we were discussing over lunch. Claude knew what will happen at the end of that show.
Yeah, just serendipity. Let it happen, folks.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun as always. And this is also why I don't like deciding topics a week in advance. Like that conversation is relevant. And it led to a pretty good one here today. Any final thoughts for the viewers?
Keep exploring AI. Keep thinking about it and internally discussing and going through different points of view on AI. That was kind of a lesson learned for me today, with internal kind of, challenging myself on and others. How much do you want to use AI to polish and be on the safe side compared to giving out the human touch, the soul in a way, which is hard to get with pure AI. And I would say there's no right or wrong answer. There's no black and white answer. And the best way to move forward is just openly talk about it and challenge when you use AI or you don't use AI, if it could be better with AI or without AI.
Yeah. Well said. So until next week, we hope this was valuable for everybody. And as you're looking at all your touch points, find those opportunities and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
See you next week.